What is happening, guys? Kadi Plays here, bringing you another Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel video. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a tier list for the hand traps in the current format. So this is something that's obviously super important to talk about because the meta is we're in a completely new meta post Banlist and post New War Dragon set release. Despia, Sword Soul, Tri Brigade, these decks are kind of taking over the meta, and there's a lot of decks that are also like really good in the rogue categories or tier 3 categories that we need to talk about. So, how do you stop those decks? Well, one way is to hit them with hand traps, and that's what this video is going to talk about. It's going to talk about the best hand traps for the current metagame. And so, yeah, without further ado, let's jump right in. We have 5 categories to talk about today. We got staple, which obviously exactly what it sounds like. This means you can put it in any single deck you're playing, and it's going to be good pretty much across the board. Can't go wrong means you can put it in your deck and you really can't go wrong with it, but it might not necessarily be a staple, right? Potential brick is kind of exactly what it sounds like. It means it's going to be good in some situations, but not in others. It's not universally good. Niche slash very matchup dependent. This is very similar to potential brick, but this is going to be more of a side deck category. You're side decking this for specific matchups, but you really don't want this in the main deck. And then finally, dude, why'd you craft that? Because this card sucks right now. So let's jump right on in. We got Ally, a Justice, Cycle Reader. This is absolutely matchup dependent. This is really, really good against Drytron, but that's about it right now in the current metagame. I'm sure it's got its, applications against other matchups, but against Drytron, this is fantastic. It banishes 2 lights from their graveyard, it can completely shut off some of their plays, so this is great. But it only hits light monsters, so a card like DD Crow is way better. It's got so much more utility. Ash Blossom is absolutely a staple right now. This hits every single one of the meta decks. This is absolutely insane against Despia, hitting the Branded Fusion, hitting the Patchwork, hitting the Aliber, hitting all these cards. Obviously, you want to hit the Branded Fusion, but like if they don't have a Branded Fusion or something, and you know they don't, if they're in like a top deck situation or have like 2 cards in their hand, and you know what they have. Like if you're in like an understood known game state, Ash Blossom can be really powerful on some of the other cards in the deck. Bell, you can't go wrong with this card. This card is great. Also, I'm going to go ahead and say something else about Ash Blossom because this gets a lot of credit for being really, really good against Despia, but it's good against Sword Soul too. It's good against Tri Brigade. Sword Soul, you can stop their Searcher, you can stop their Emergence, you can stop their Pot of Desires, you can stop their Ecclesia, you can stop a lot with this card, so it's a lot better than one might think in that matchup. Then Tri Brigade, it stops the Fractal, it stops the Tenki, it stops the Kit, it stops the Nerval, it stops pretty much anything you need. It can stop the Omen Search, it can stop a lot of stuff in that deck. The Desires, Pot of Prosperity, whatever they're playing, this hits it. So Ash is 100% a staple right now. Can't go wrong with Bell. Bell is a fantastic card. It's got great applications in the current metagame. It's always had great applications. It's really, really good because it stops cards like Called by the Grave, and it really, really, really hits Despia very, very hard. This is also good. It's pretty decent in the it's in the Sword Soul matchup because they move cards out of the graveyard a fair bit. So it's got a lot of applications. It's good against pretty much everything, and you can't go wrong with it. But I don't think it's a staple. I think there are alternatives to this card. Chaos Hunter is currently in a really weird spot. I don't think this is very good. It doesn't have too many great matchups right now. There's just other cards that shine out, outclass it right now, to be honest with you, and I don't think anyone's really going to disagree with that. So, Token Collector, this is absolutely a staple card, but this is kind of a hard staple card to pick. This is a staple, but it's very matchup dependent because this absolutely dominates Sword Soul, like it destroys Sword Soul. It's so good against that deck that it makes that deck not like the best deck in the game, hands down. But it's bad against everything else right now. So it's really, really hard to say. Like inside decks, it's a staple. But that's kind of where this goes. I kind of honestly want to say side deck right here. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say side deck, super, super niche. We're actually going to bump this up here. We're going to go like this. We're changing the category. Sorry, I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I think this is correct. We're going side deck right here. This is a side deck card, and it's the perfect spot for it. Contact C, it's super niche. It's got its applications in the meta for sure. It's good against decks like Tri-Brigade. It's good against decks like, honestly, it's pretty good against Despia, to be honest with you. I don't know what they'd fuse off with this. I'm sure there's something, but I'm not thinking off the top of my head. But it's not as good as some of the other cards in the metagame. So you should probably just play like Bell against Despia, or Ash against Despia, or Lancia against Tri-Brigade, right? So there's just a lot of cards you should play instead of this that I don't think this is worth it, but it's very niche and it's got its applications. Um, Deity Crow is right here with Bell. These cards are very, very similar in their application. They kind of hit the same decks. They're very good against the same things. I think Bell's a little bit better, so I'm going to put Bell at the front of this category. But they have like a wide range. They hit a wide range of decks. They can be main decked. Um, so yeah, I mean, Crow's a great card right now. I don't think there's much to say about it. Joel and Lockbird. This is another one. Like, you cannot go wrong with this card. This card's fantastic. It hits so many different decks. It hits Despia, Drytron, Flunder, Spirals. It hits so many decks in the current metagame right now, and I think this is a card that you cannot go wrong with. Effect Valor. I think Effect Valor is right here with all these that stay at the can't go wrong. There should honestly, like, these two categories, like can't go wrong and staple, they are basically the same thing, but I think these are just the ones in staple are just slightly better. But it's super hard to differentiate because it's so matchup dependent. But I guess Ash and them, it's just a little bit more universal. Honestly, though, I can't even cap with you right now. This is on the same level as Ash because this hits Alibur, it hits the Bellion, it hits all the Sword Soul monsters. Well, not Longyan, but it hits the Sword Soul monsters. It hits all the Tri Brigade stuff. It can stop spirals when they, even when they have Resort up and they go for one of their non-spiral links, it can stop them. It's pretty good against Dragon Link. Yeah, I think Valor's in the stable category, and I I think it's got to be because it's just so universal right now. All the effect negations are. Um, Gamma Gamma's absolutely a staple in my opinion. I think this is the best monster effect negation in the game right now. It's insane going first. If you're able to resolve this going first, you're not losing that game. Like 9 times out of 10, you are not losing that game. Funny enough, like I'm playing this in my Despia right now, and yesterday I played in a tournament, and I played against one of my teammates in round three. So top six, it was top 16. Wait, it was round 3 or 4. So it was top 16 of this tournament. Um, Huge tournament, huge prize support for the tournament. It was like $700 tournament. It was awesome. I was playing Despia. He was on Sword Soul. I won the coin flip. I was like, okay, sweet. This is gonna be good. I knew what he's on because he's my teammate, and I open Gamma Branded Fusion, and I'm like, dude, I'm the best player in the game. Like this game's over. I'm about to cook him. I go Branded Fusion. He's got Ash because he's good. He's really good at this game. He draws what he needs, and I was like, this is exactly what I wanted to happen. Gamma. He chains Maxi. So, he draws 3 cards because I go summon Gamma, summon out Lebellion, summon out Mirror Jade. That's 3 cards right there. All of a sudden, he's back up to 5 cards in his hand, or he's up to 6 cards in his hand, and then he hits me with a Gamma, and then he hits me with a Bell on his turn, and I was like, dude, this is absolutely insane. Maxi's the best card in the game, but also Gamma's insane because it just put me in a position where I might be able to make a play if he didn't have Maxi. Sorry for the rant. Completely necessary though. Gamma's insane. Every deck should be playing this right now, I think. It's great in Sword Soul, great in Despia. You might not need to play it in Tri Brigade, but it's good in Tri Brigade because Fractal baits it, Tinkey baits it, Pot of Desires baits it. It's just a good card. So just play this card. Ghost Mourner. To be honest with you, I'm going to put this in super niche right now. The reason being is because this only affects special summon monsters, so it's nowhere near as good as Valor and Improm. Okay? The reason Valor and Improm are so good right now in Gamma is because they hit just monster effects. So it's not restricted like Ghost Mourner is. So I don't know any reason why you would play Ghost Mourner over one of the other cards. But that's just me, and that's just the current format we're in. So take it for what you will. Um, Honestly, right now, Ghost Ogre's looking like, dude, why'd you craft this? It really is. It's really looking like that, but it's not that bad. It's definitely super niche. It's got its applications. It's good against Flunder, even though that deck's not that good right now. It's it's not great because Adventure's not great, but this could come back into the format at any moment. When Sprite gets here, this card's going to get really good again because it hits Gigantic. And they're still locked into twos because of the way that card's worded, but that's a few months in the future, so we don't got to worry about that right now. But Ghost Ogre, it's I'm going to put it at the top of super niche because I think it's got more applications than all of these across the board. I think this is probably where we are. I'm sorry, I'm going to try to rank these within the tiers a little bit, but I think this is kind of where we're at. Ghost Reaper is super, super niche, but it's a really, actually, no, I'm going to say it's a great side deck card because this is. Any deck that can side deck this card should be side decking it. This card is so good right now because we're really in a 2-deck format. I keep on talking about Tri Brigade like we're in a 3-deck format, but we're really not. The stats say that we're in a 2-deck format, but Tri Brigade is. I have so much respect for Tri Brigade that I can't help but acknowledge it in every circle that I'm in. Right? Like, Tri Brigade is really, really underrated right now, and it's not getting the representation that it deserves. But even if Tri Brigade comes back into the meta like super hard, you really only need to put like 1 or 2 cards in the extra deck, like for Ghost Reaper to be good against Tri Brigade. But looking at just like the 2-deck format we're in, right? If you're playing a deck like Flunder that you don't need your extra deck for a lot, you can just like put Reapers in and then put like miscellaneous like extra deck cards. They already play the Tri Brigade cards in their extra deck because they're good sins off Maximus. If someone makes you send off Maximus, so putting in like that extra the Sword Soul cards like the Baron, maybe the Grandmaster, Mirror Jade, Lebellion, like whatever you're gonna put in there for the matchups, like it's so good and it can win you so many games that way. Um, highly, highly suggest this card if you can play it. Herald of Greenlight. This is like a rare, so like, why'd you craft it? But also, like, I don't blame you for crafting it. This is the Herald. This is the spell negate for fairies. Like, this is a really good card if spells are good, but spells are really never worth negating. Like, sometimes they are, and so I mean, like in some situations it's super niche. But there's no reason like why you'd play this card because the game is not the spell cards normally just get you into monster effects. So you'd rather just negate the monster effects, but that seems like a weird way to go about it. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this card because sometimes I think this card would be like really, really game breaking, but other times I think this card would be absolutely terrible when Orange Light is almost never terrible. Um, Speaking of Orange Light, this is really, really hard to talk about because this is like the best hand trap in the game. Like, not really. It's the second best hand trap in the game in the deck that it works in. Like in Drytrons, in Fairies, or in a Shizu tier elements, when that deck comes to Master Duel, please be banned. Please be nerfed before we get it. Please, Konami. But like any deck that can play this card should be playing this card at 3. Like this card is absolutely insane. It negates and it destroys and it has no restrictions other than discard this and a fairy. And most of the time that's good. This card is so insane. So it's like literally the second best hand trap in the game behind what we haven't gotten to yet. But it's super niche in the fact that you can only play it in fairy decks. So this is really, really hard to talk about. But no matter where I put this, someone's probably gonna have a problem with it. But I'm gonna put it in staple for fairy decks. Super niche for everything else because dude, why'd you craft it if you're playing something else? But staple for fairy decks, absolutely. Herald of Purplelight, it's kind of here with Herald of Greenlight. It's just way worse, so it's not there. It's down here, 100%, because this card is absolutely terrible, and traps are not good enough to play this card. Play Red Reboot. Don't be bad. Play Red Reboot. I'm not even going to talk about it anymore. Improm, absolutely insane. Better than Valor, to be honest. The only reason it's not better than Valor in some situations is because it's a tuner and it's because it's a light. But every other situation, Improm is better. Well, not every situation, but 90% of the time, Improm is better. Don't really think I need to say anything about this. These cards are great right now. They hit everything. Lancia is obviously a fantastic side deck card. I'm going to put it above Ghost Reaper because Ghost Reaper is more, you know, Ghost Reaper requires more cards to work than Lancia does. You can just throw Lancias in your side deck, and you're gonna have a good time. It's good against Spiral. It's good against Tri Brigade. It's decent against Despia, right? There's some applications there. It's decent against Sword Soul, but I wouldn't do that. It's good against Dragon Link. It's good against a lot of stuff, So yeah, Lancia's a great card. Maxi is absolutely oppressive. There should be another category for this card. This card should have its own category. Honestly, everything else should just... This category should be eliminated, and Maxi should just have its own category called Banned, because it should be banned. This is the most toxic, degenerate card that's ever been printed, to be honest with you. Okay, maybe it's not the most toxic card that's ever been printed, but this card is absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to make a video on Maxi in the near future, but that's a little glimpse as to my opinion on this card. It's the only hand trap on this list that cannot be played around. It's the only hand trap on this list that is single-handedly, if it resolves, game ending. Most of the time, these other hand traps, you can still play your turn. But 9 times out of 10, if Maxi resolves on you, you are losing that game. Whether it's first or second. Whether you're going first or second. So, it's just, that's my reason for hating on this card. I hate this card because it can't be played around. Unless you're playing a non-special summon strategy. But those are very few and far between in Yu-Gi-Oh! But that is a video for another day. Not going to get into it super hard today. But moving on to Nibiru. Nibiru is currently the epitome of can't go wrong, but also can't go right. This is not good in a lot of situations, but it's amazing in some. It's very mediocre against Despia. Despia has to actively play into this card for it to be good against him because it can play easily around this card, but even when they play into it, they can still combo you off of fusing with your Nibiru. I did this in a tournament about a week ago, and I think it was GG Tour. I talked about it in my GG Tour video, where I got nibbed playing Despia. And then I was like, okay, chain Mirror Jade, send Ash Dragon to the graveyard, end phase, Ash Dragon, summon out Albaz, Albaz effect, discard a card, fuse with your Mirror Jade into Albion, Albion effect, go into Mirror Jade, boom. Combo. Like, I got plenty of resources. Plus, I had an Albion in the graveyard from before because I Mirror Jaded, then fused off with it, brought it back with Ad Libitum. So I got a Branded and Red on the end phase too. So there was, like, my inboard ended up being just as good as it was before. I lost a card in my hand. That's kind of unfortunate. I lost a Dragos. Well, it wasn't as good as it was before because I lost a Dragos to Palia. That is unfortunate. But he lost a card in his hand. So Dragos to Palia did its job, right? It baited out a card. So honestly, this card's very mediocre against that deck, against Despia. It's very mediocre against Sword Soul because Sword Soul can play around this deck super hard. It can make Chow Fang, it can make Baron. It's not that hard to do. Against Tri Brigade, it's very mediocre. They can do all their plays in under 4 summons if they really try to. So it's mid, but it's great against some situations. In some situations, you absolutely punish Sword Soul players who don't go for Baron because they think Nib's not in the format. Or you absolutely punish someone who's not playing Ash Dragon in their extra deck on Despia because they don't know how to build their deck, whatever it might be. So Nib is great sometimes, but it's also kind of a dead card in your hand other times. It's also terrible to top deck into, which most hand traps are going second, but that's neither here nor there. Phantasma is definitely super niche right now. Sorry about that. I think it's kind of very average. It's got its applications. It's great against Tri Brigade. It's decent against Sword Soul, to be honest. Like, it's underrated against Sword Soul because they almost always make Monk, and then they can't target your stuff anymore. So there's that. It's kind of cool, but still super niche. This is Delta, I want to say. Cyframe Gear Delta. This is right here with Herald of Greenlight, but it's a worse version of it because you have to have no monsters. But it's also better because you can play it in any deck at the same time. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of a hard card to judge. But I think it's got to go right here. Super niche, not worth playing. Epsilon is trash tier. This is honestly worse than Herald of Purplelight because it's the same thing. It's just bad. They're both just bad. Don't craft these cards, even though they're rares and commons or normals. D-Shifter, I mean, you can't really go wrong with D-Shifter, right? Like, I mean, if you can play this card, like, play it for sure. But it's not great against Sword Soul. It's not great against Despia. It doesn't do anything to Flu. Like, Thunder Dragons aren't as much in the metagame as I thought they would be. But that deck can main deck it, so it doesn't do anything to them. It's really good against Tri Brigade. It's really good against Dragons. It's really good against Spiral. But the best decks in the game, the ones that are defining the meta, can literally play this card if they want. So you can't go wrong with it, but you can't go right with it either. It's kind of right here with Nib, where these cards are both like really good in some situations, but really mediocre in other situations. But they're better than the super niche category. So yeah, that's where I think the tier list lies. Again, I want to point out, if anyone skipped to the end of this video to see what my rankings were, Herald of Orange Light is an absolutely insane card in decks that it can be played. But if you can't play it, obviously this card sucks if you can't play it. But if you can play it, This card's amazing. Ban Maxi. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe. Have a good one. Peace.